All right, Rob, we're just about ready to go here. I got to hit the record. Should have had that going first.
Yeah, I think we're live on YouTube.
Yep, we're live.
Yep.
All right, here we go.
Welcome to the New Media Show, where each Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, UTC +4, Todd Cochran and Rob Greenlee take their over 30 combined years of leadership in the podcasting space to discuss, dissect, and deconstruct the current podcasting news, forecasts, trends, and predictions. Now here are your hosts, Academy of Podcasting Hall of Famers, Todd Cochran and Rob Greenlee.
Rob, here we are, New Media Show, back in the saddle, and we're back on the split screen as well.
Yes. Well, that's good. Good, Todd. It's great to be back with the show again. There's lots of interesting things to talk about bubbling in the podcasting space, and a lot of them have to do with kind of size of this and reach of that. And I thought we would talk about some of that stuff and why it might be important.
Yeah, we can get into that. But, one of the things I was doing earlier today was, if you look at your screen, Rob, do you know what that is?
That is Podcast Movement, right?
No, that is NAB Show map.
NAB Show. Oh, okay.
Booth selection for 2022 is already here. And here's what we have decided. There's no way on this God's green earth am I going to be stuck in West again. So I see you guys picked to be in West. Sorry, we're going to Central Hall.
Oh, okay.
There's just from a traffic standpoint.
Do we have the option to move to Central? They pigeonholing us there. That's like the only
well, we're not even close to another in West to begin with.
Right.
So I was like, why do I want to be around all these big broadcast tower stuff? And I said, I told Mackenzie this afternoon, send us our alternate. We don't want to be in West. We're going to go to Central and try our luck. So
right.
we'll see. But I am not getting stuck in that down in that pit anymore of West Hall. So lucky I'm even considering going back.
Yeah, I'll have to talk to the team about that a little bit too, because it may be good for both of us that we move to Central if that's possible.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know who made the decision on your guys' end, but I will tell you which. I'll message you offline and let you know where we're at, so that in case someone's listening.
Yeah. Right.
But another thing that happened today was, and I don't know if we showed it on the last show. I don't know if I guess I can show it here. Blueberry released the Media Kits, our Media Kit platform.
Right.
And we're pretty excited about that. And this is an example of the Podcast Insider Media Kit. And shows last 30 days, impactful plays, downloads per episode, social media reach, survey information. So it's just like a nice little one-sheeter. So we're pretty pleased with the result of that and getting that out. Another, I'm trying to
that can help shows sell their own ads or sponsorships, right?
Or even have the ability to show off to someone that's a potential guest.
Right. That's true too.
And so we've got that kicked off to the street and starting to get a little feedback on it. So I will have to say this, and maybe I can do a little bit of fun here. Hang on, before we okay, here we go.
Don't eat me, James Cridland.
So I had sent James an email with our announcement, and he didn't make it into Pod News. I'm like, oh, he must have missed the email. So I sent it again.
Right.
And
don't eat me, James Cridland.
He is on vacation. So everyone say hello to James on vacation, and I won't say where he's at. I won't, but he is vacationing. He's letting me know that it's very difficult to get a newsletter out while one is on vacation,
I can see how that might be the case. Sure.
especially when you want to vacate and you have to put a newsletter out. So
Well, it's a big responsibility James takes on to try and do this every day, right?
I think he does it five or 6 days a week. So
Yeah. And he
that-
does an audio podcast with it too, and
yeah.
Podland, and yeah.
So anyway, enjoy your vacation, James, and
Yeah.
we'll I'll give you a thank you for letting me know why it missed. But no, we're just it is kind of a weird time right now, being summer,
hmm
and we are
Things always kind of slow down a little bit.
just a little. So a lot of announcements still happening though in the space.
hmm
But one thing's for sure is that the stuff you're hearing makes for a curious topic today.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think but if you look at Pod News, that's kind of been the thread, right? The Edison Research are having a bigger sample size for their research.
Yep.
So there was another impact of size. And I think that's good. That may give us more accurate Edison Research data. I think the bigger the sample size, the more accurate the research is. And it appears Canada has overtaken the U.S. in the size of weekly listening audience. So, or weekly podcast listening per capita, I guess might be the better way of saying it, which has been trending that way for a while now. I think Western Canada's has always kind of excelled in podcast listening, but I guess the rest of the country is catching up, and I'm hearing the same kind of conversations happening out of the UK and others that podcast listening is just kind of, it's reaching a fever pitch of people interested in this medium. So I guess that's a good thing.
Well,
So I get it.
I think that anytime we grow, it doesn't matter where it grows, it's all good, right?
And at the same time, there was a topic that came up. Is it time to look beyond the big cities for podcast listeners and content? So, you have another scale and going the other direction. Are we just not tapping into an opportunity that's out there of local audiences around local podcasting? I think as we get bigger, and I've always said this, as the medium gets larger and as we get more listeners, the opportunity for local becomes more real. And I think that's the inverse on this. And it's interesting.
But I don't know. I'm when they say we're not reaching small towns, I'm living in the epitome of a small town.
No, it isn't that we're not reaching them. It's just content that caters to local markets, like radio has in the past, right? It hasn't been a focus, right?
But
I think, yeah.
But an average podcaster is not okay. What type of a market are we talking about? Because in this market that I live in, there's 25,000 people in this
a
town.
Small market, right?
Well, there's no way I could make a living. There's no way, impossible to do enough content. We have a newspaper here that has, if we're lucky, 2 pages of local happenings. That's usually who got arrested for a DUI, who's got arrested for some sort of spousal abuse, who is, what high school track runner has won the race. There just isn't. So I guess you have to have a little bigger community, but the question is, there's a gobsmack large number of towns in the United States that are 25,000 and smaller. It's
right,
just,
and that's kind of raised by actually Larry Rosen from Edison Research is the one that kind of raised this topic, and he was suggesting, based on I guess some of the data from the Infinite Dial, that fewer people listen to podcasts in small cities and rural areas.
I don't believe that.
And that's what his research is showing.
Okay, and
I guess.
when I talk to people, what podcast you listen to, they're just as dialed in as. But are we talking like
fewer people is what he's saying? It's not that they're not listening, and it's not necessarily. I think what he's suggesting here is that maybe the smaller cities and the rural areas haven't caught up to podcasting yet, less than what I guess I was suggesting earlier, which is that there's a lot of listeners there, and they're craving local content, and that may or may not be the case. I think it depends on the city and the demographic. But there are companies out there like CityCast that are catering to creating content for cities, right? Smaller cities. So there is this bubbling, and we've been talking about it off and on for years on this show, that this market might come. And I guess as I think about scale and size, and these local radio stations, maybe over time, we see some of them go away that are catering to local communities. Maybe there's a growing opportunity for those stations to convert over to creating local podcasting or on-demand streaming content or things like that can replace the radio station, that can be done cheaper or less expensive, or I don't know. It's just one of those things that I've wondered about for many years, being a guy that came out of radio, whether or not we would ever see that situation develop.
Yeah, I'm just, I think there's
I'm skeptical too, but
there's a delta here between who is listening to podcast and where.
Mm-hmm. And
the second piece of that is who, it's where they're listening. And the second bucket is there enough people in a specific area to do a geo-targeted podcast? And you're going to have some super marketing. You're going to have to, maybe it isn't going to be that much marketing in a small town. Maybe you can buy some radio. And I saw something that was that I was going to talk about last week a little bit, and we didn't. But if you think about what has happened with radio, and there was it was out of, oh my God, I'm going to kick myself here. But anyway, the analogy that was made by the writer out of Detroit, I'm sorry, it's Seth. Anyway, the story is that radio in the early days allowed Sirius XM to advertise, and then they allowed Facebook to advertise, and Facebook came in and advertised, then taught small businesses in towns how to reach their market. So basically, they took Facebook money in spite of themselves because they were desperate for advertising dollars, and they ultimately lost a bunch of advertisers that were local. And Facebook businesses, or businesses that were on Facebook, started marketing directly to their customers on Facebook versus radio. Now, what's happening is, and it's even larger, is that radio is now taking ads for the upcoming Amazon Prime Day. I've seen it on, I went to see Elvis, the movie, and I laughed because it was the direct thing. So I saw an Amazon Prime Day advertisement at the movie theater. And I'm thinking to myself, these folks, including radio, are idiots, because radio's now advertising heavily for Amazon Prime Day. Now, I'm not the genesis thinker of this particular topic. It came from another writer, and I apologize. I'll figure it out and make good. But and I agree completely. So what are they doing? They're driving. You've got, in this town, I've got a Myers, I've got a Walmart, I have those are the two big ones, and then a whole bunch of small businesses. As a matter of fact, we've got it's going to open up just down the 100 feet from me is one of those places that sells cheap tools. It's
like the tractor store or something like
No,
that?
it's not. It's not a tractor store, but people love them because they sell cheap tools, all kinds of tools. So anyway, regardless, they're going to open up here, and then we have farm implement stores and all that kind of stuff here too, because it's rural.
Yeah.
But here you've got a movie theater where these people are all local. Tell them about Amazon Prime Day versus going to shop at Walmart, Meijer, and they're really doing a bad thing. They're taking the money, but they're doing a bad thing.
Driving people out of the community.
Driving people out of the community businesses. So I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe it's time that I start advertising podcasts on local small radio stations. And if you're going to launch long way to get here, but if you're going to launch a local show, then you go buy airtime on radio. I'll go local radio. I'll go 95.7, a local country station. I'll go down to Angola, Indiana, and buy 100.3 WLPI. It's a 80s, 90s. It's basically, they play popular music, but they go back. So it's got a huge audience, and start promoting a local podcast. And that budget probably wouldn't be too bad. If you were serious about it, for $5,000, and you could get the word out real quickly about this local podcast. And then what do? Then you listen to every advertiser that's advertising on that radio station, and you go pitch them to advertise on your local show.
Right.
And guess what you ultimately could do as a podcaster? You could usurp.
Well, I think that's what a lot of the radio stations are starting to think for themselves, right? Is that they need to convert what they're doing over to podcasting over time. To do exactly that. But yeah, I think that the argument has always been, I think in that strategy, Todd, is that the demographic of listeners to radio is so different than the demographic of listeners to podcasts that it doesn't always
depends.
Translate. Right.
It depends. So
yeah, I think it depends on the topic, and radio needs to start catering a little bit more to maybe topics that appeal to maybe a little younger audience than what they've been typically doing.
Yeah.
And that's beyond just music, right? So
it was Jacobs Media that posted that post.
Jacobs, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seth from,
well, it wasn't Seth that made the article. It was
Fred Jacobs.
Yeah. Fred Jacobs posted the post about this.
Right.
And was he the one that you referred to earlier? Or are I pulling a brain fart?
I was talking about Mr. Rosen from
from Edison.
The Edison Research.
So the article that I'm referring to was written by Jacobs Media about, come on, radio, we're being stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to search Google, Detroit and Seth, because I don't think Seth works at them.
No, he doesn't. No, but he used to. And he used to write articles like that too. And I think he still writes articles, or at least links to articles that are kind of, hybridly thinking about radio and podcasting.
Yeah. So it's the article I'll bring up is Radio's Definition of Insanity. It was put out on June 30th. This got my brain working pretty hard. Mm-hmm. And so everything that I just talked about for a minute really was for me, it was kind of the kicker off was from this. And it really, to me, was one of those moments that, again, was backed up when I went to see Elvis. Great movie, by the way, in the theater, for sure. That and that Amazon, their big 2 days of sales, here they're advertising that hardcore, and the only people that go to this movie theater are small town America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
it's local. Yeah.
And maybe it's not going to affect the radio station. I mean, the movie theater, but when the country station and all the local stations are playing that ad, if I was a local advertiser, if I was a local business, phew,
Yeah, it'd be obvious where to do that, right?
well, what they're going to do is say, okay, I'm going to just go spend my money on Facebook, and I'm going to promote stuff on Facebook. Here's a trick that Walmart's doing. I use Amazon just like everybody else, because obviously I don't like going into stores very much. I just hate walking up and down aisles.
Yeah.
And I ordered something the other day. It was a simple thing. It was vitamins, vitamin D3 or whatever I ordered, and it was delivered by Walmart. It was not branded on Amazon as Walmart, but what Walmart has done is they have created sub brands that you don't know it's Walmart, but it's delivered in a Walmart box. So Walmart has kind of figured out, okay, we need to play it.
Can't fight them, join them.
Right. Can't fight him, join him. And so it's like, oh, that was an interesting move.
Right.
I
mean, Walmart's had a pretty strong e-commerce play for many years,
But I've never
Walmart.com
ordered
search.
anything on Walmart.com ever.
Yeah, but you can. I mean, it's got a full catalog of things and it's a good option.
Yeah. I guess I should price shop. Another thing that I found recently was, and this is completely off topic, I was completely out of time. I needed to go grocery shopping. So I've never had groceries delivered, ever. So I was out of time, didn't have time to go into town, so I went and put my order in on the Meijer app and ordered, and it was delivered by a company I think called Shipt or something like that. That was some driver, some gig worker.
Yeah.
And I did some comparisons between the apps, and it was definitely cheaper to order directly on the Meijer's website and have it shipped, because it appeared to me that when I was on the Shipt app and looking at the same selection of food items, everything was 10, 15, 20 cents higher.
Mm.
So I thought, oh, interesting. So if you're getting groceries delivered, you might want to compare the store's app to the third party app, and you might find out that so it was kind of interesting on that standpoint. But anyway, that's not a podcast topic, but just something I observed.
Well, it's the process. I mean, because if it can save you a lot of time by ordering your groceries online, have them delivered.
Oh, it's
time, gas, hassle, all that stuff.
Yeah. So I figured it saved me 90 minutes at least, because I'd had to drove into town and walk the halls.
Yeah, gather it up.
And you know what else it
out.
stopped me from doing is buying the tempting things that were like, oh, I didn't.
The convenience items, right?
The convenience items, yep. And I just
by the checkout.
Right. I had these. Well, not even that. Just stuff you walk by and say that's cool.
Right.
So I just got the essentials.
Yeah, I shop at Costco a lot too, and it's like, boy, the prices at Costco have gone way up too.
Well, my closest Costco's an hour away, so it's not convenient.
It's like stuff that I used to spend just a couple $100s on are now like $350 now. So
well, Rob, you haven't you understand groceries are up like
I know,
insane amount of money,
right? And let's hope it doesn't continue to go up with
the
threatened food shortages.
Yes, stand by.
Right.
I had someone in town was complaining that the electric, because our local electric is done by a public utility. We don't. I pay my bill here to someone called CPB, and it's where I live in the country. My power is with Consumers Power, which is a big company here in the state of Michigan, and CPB is going to raise their energy costs 4%, and people are howling. They're howling. They're on a Facebook group. They're screaming, and I'm like, 4%. Yeah,
that's nothing.
You better be quiet, because it could have been 10 or 15.
Well, here where I live, this past year it went up almost 20%, and right above me up here is a bunch of solar panels that just got installed. So, yeah, so I'm generating my own power now.
Well, now you're on the 5 to 6 year payback. So, so that's the key. Well, with the raising energy costs, maybe it's going to be 4 years. You don't know.
Right.
So it is definitely an interesting time. But so maybe this local podcast thing, if you strategize it correctly. Now, here's the question. I want to hear from someone that's doing a local podcast in a city smaller than, let's say, 50,000 people. And have you been able, does anyone know of a show in a market smaller than 50,000 people that's doing targeted to that local municipality? Is anyone being successful in monetizing with local ads and building a sustaining show?
I would be surprised if it was any town or city that was at that size. I think the opportunity may be better as you get a little larger.
All right. So we're going to have to go to Google here and do a little Google search. So let's just look at this. How many cities in the United States
have more than 50,000?
No, have less.
Have less.
How many cities in the United States has more than, let's do more than 100,000.
Okay. Has more than 100,000. Yeah. That's probably a better.
There are 317 U.S. cities that has more than 100,000 people in it, according to Google. Now, how many cities in the United States that has less than 100,000? And this is probably not fair. Has more. Let's do 50,000. More than 50. Let's pick a different number. So more than 50,000. So 780 cities had populations of more than 50,000 in 2019.
So twice as many as have.
Right. So then how many cities in the United States has less than
50,000?
Less than 50,000. This is going to be a big number. So as of 2018, there are 19,495 cities that have a population. Oh, they used the word, they went with 5,000.
Oh.
Let's see if I can get an answer here.
That's still a lot of shows. Or a lot of cities.
So how many cities are there in the United States? There's 19,502 incorporated places in the United States. Oh, here it is. Here's and I'm going to steal. This is from, I don't want, oh, come on. All right. Here is let me flip the screen here. Here's the breakdown. So there are only 10 cities with 1 million or more. There's 27 with 500 to 999,000, 250 to 499,000, 52, 100 to 249,225, 50 to 99,466, 25 to 49,741, 10,000 to 2499, which I qualify for, 1572, and under 10,000 is 16,410. Now, the village that I grew up in, of course, I didn't really grow up in it. I grew up outside on a dirt road, was 1,200. So, but those two towns, that 1,200 town, the 25,000 town I'm in, plus maybe another town, another 10 or 15 miles away, might get to about 30 if we're lucky. So that would be like one county. So you probably, if you're going to do a podcast that's regional, you have to think about it from a county standpoint, because you probably could do okay and have enough news to cover a county.
You probably have to think about the demographics too, to some degree.
Yeah. So let's look at the average population of a county. By the way, the drought here in my local town is over. We've gotten 3.5 inches in the last 3 days.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a lot of rain.
So here's an interesting thing from, come on, I want to see it bigger. Yeah. Here is average population by county. California, 675K by county, all the way down to 13K up in the Montana, Nebraska area. So that's an interesting national average, 102,000 per county in 2016. That's a little older. But so 100,000, let's think about this then. Let's say the average is 100,000 per county, Rob. Then really, what do you need then? You need 10% at least.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wonder what the average, now the next question is, what's the average radio station market share?
Yeah, what is there, like 20 top U.S. markets or something like that for radio?
Well, I'm just
25?
gonna look at average, see if we can get that number. Average. So I'm looking.
So Todd, thinking about this topic beyond just the spectrum of city size, right?
Sure.
Just to give an example of a real world company that's targeting local podcasts, the CityCast network, which was formed by the former lead guy over at Slate Magazine Podcasts, who's the CEO of CityCast. His name is David Plotz,
Mhm.
and I believe he's still doing podcasting, like political podcasting and stuff. So he's got a background in that kind of stuff. But the cities that he's working in right now, building his company, is Chicago, Denver, Houston, Salt Lake, Pittsburgh, Las Vegas, Boise, and DC. So you can kind of see
Those are big cities.
they're larger cities.
Yeah, they're
right.
major metropolitan areas.
Right.
Probably more than 1 million. I don't know about Boise, but
Yeah, Boise and I don't think
I think the rest of those are more than 1 million. Vegas is, Pittsburgh, Houston, Salt Lake. I think all those are cities bigger than 1 million, maybe.
probably, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
close.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So, but Rob, these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 shows. All right, let's look at Chicago. How many shows are they doing?
I don't know. That's a good question.
They're only doing one.
Yeah.
They're doing one show.
Well, you probably don't want to have too many in a
No.
market to get started with until you've built out, your reputation with one show.
But
Right.
so if a market that has more than 1 million people and can only support one local show, that's not good.
Well, yeah, I've definitely thought about, inviting David Plotz to join us. I've known David for many, many years.
That'd be a great conversation to have him on.
Yeah.
I know you're bullish on local podcasting and have been for a long time, but
I just want to keep the interest in it bubbling out there, because you never know. It might turn into an opportunity, and I believe David obviously sees it, but he's seeing it more from a large city perspective, which is how radio was looked at it, right?
but if you look at this too, if you think about Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
all right. So when I was away in Hawaii and living in Honolulu,
Mm-hmm.
my roots are still back here in southern Michigan. And there was the only way I really could keep up on what was going on locally was basically to take a peek at Facebook and, kind of follow a little bit. But If you're originally from Chicago and you're living in Los Angeles and want to keep abreast of what's going on in Chicago, well, this to me is as of a population that's big enough to be able to support a show where there would be people from all over the country tuning in to CityCast Chicago.
Right. There's expats of
Right.
sorts from different
Yeah.
cities around the country too.
But if I did
spent most of my life in Seattle, so I could have an interest in listening to a show out of Seattle.
But if I did CityCast Coldwater
Right.
of 25,000, yep, there's a lot of people that have left Coldwater. But am I going to be able to produce enough exciting, interesting content that is not going to be like, if I'm living in Texas, I don't really care that Tommy Jones won the track meet. I don't care that, who's went to jail. I don't care some of that stuff. So I want to know what's happening with growth, what's happening. You got to have topics that are going to attract people outside of your local community.
Right.
And, let's be frank. You and I have been on the mic for a long time, but having a business owner in to talk about his car detailing business, that's not compelling content.
Well, not for the target.
Not
that
for the
we're trying to
not
reach.
for the expat.
Right.
It's definitely maybe interesting for the local listener, local.
Mhm.
But, what do you have to do to reach?
Yeah, but doesn't broadcast radio have the same challenge?
But they have all these made up BS stuff from Nielsen, how many people are listening and tuning in, and you hear the ad 5 times or
That's true.
6 times in an hour for the person that's tuning in for 10 minutes on their drive to, because it takes me 10 minutes to drive to work.
I mean, because this is as much a discussion about the success of, or the potential success or not of podcasts in a local market. I think it's almost directly translatable to the potential success of long term of a radio station in a local market.
Well,
right?
I think reason.
Is there a big difference between the two, really?
Well,
at the end of the
radio's
day?
got it figured out. They're still surviving and getting billions of dollars of advertising to
Right.
keep them online. But they're also doing a mix of national. They're advertising for Amazon Prime,
Right.
and they don't have to work for those. Some of those ads just kind of come in.
Right. Yeah, I did notice with the CityCast, job board of sorts. I'm looking at the different roles that they look to fill in any given city. So they're actually looking for people in Philadelphia. It looks like they're going to expand into Austin and North Carolina and other. Columbus is another one that they're looking to expand into. And Atlanta as well, and they also have a newsletter editor that they're looking to hire too. So you start getting into written content, maybe in combination with the audio content.
Right.
So you're starting to see, at least what I'm seeing here, is a little bit of the digital content creation side kind of moving into the local radio biz.
Mm-hmm.
So, and trying to replace them of sorts.
Well, it's an interesting move, and we'll maybe see where CityCast is going to go with this.
But does this mean, is this a kind of a sound of an alarm for radio to start thinking like CityCast?
Well, Rob, radio is already, it's just, radio is on the clock.
I know. I agree with you.
So it's not, and the clock isn't moving forward. The clock is moving backwards. Now, where we're starting.
Yeah, but why is that happening to radio at the same time a company like CityCast is building momentum?
I don't know if CityCast is building momentum, or are they burning VC?
He keeps growing new cities.
Again, are they burning venture on the hope? What is the model? Are they profitable? We don't have any clue.
Yeah, we don't.
They could be
Correct.
burning. They could be flushing $1,000 bills down the toilet. That's really what we don't know.
Well, it's the same thing that Amazon.com did for many years too, right?
Well, they had deep enough pockets; they could do that.
Right. They kept investing in something because they had a vision for what it could be in the future.
Right.
Right. So, if that's what's going on here, I just feel the tension between local radio and what CityCast is doing, and why CityCast is growing and radio feels like they're under threat and retracting.
Maybe we need to start Country Cast. That's
Country
or
U.S.
Rural
US
America
centric.
Cast.
Right. Yeah, I think that's. I think they kind of call that Newsmax or something like that, right?
I have no clue, but I think the key here is that I think there is a opportunity for someone that, but the thing is, if you're going to do local and survive, it's daily. That's a daily show. It's got to be at least 5 days a week.
It's probably going to involve live streaming too.
It's got to be 5 days a week. It's just there's no way about it otherwise, and you're going to need help, because the longest I've seen a individual run solo daily, it's a good friend of mine. He made it about 3 years, and he hit a brick wall.
Andy McCaskey.
That's right. He hit a brick wall.
Right.
I mean, he flat out run out of gas.
Yeah, it's hard
because he was doing a heavily produced 30-minute program every single day.
Yep.
And he did very well at that.
But he was going to kill himself if he kept going.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it's just like James. He's on vacation, right?
Yeah.
And guess what? He's doing his newsletter.
Well, I'm sure he's doing it a little bit in advance, so he's hoping to get news stories that he can run with a couple days from now, right? Now, so he can take a few days off, right? Because James's that newsletter, James and I talked a lot about his newsletter on my trip to Europe, and he's automated a lot of stuff that he does on this, right?
He would have
things. Right. He can stage things like the classified ads area just runs on its own. He doesn't even look at it usually.
Right.
So it's, and there's engines that he uses to publish stuff and to do stuff on the site that you would think he's in there, typing this stuff, but he isn't really doing that. So
we ought to get, it was actually Paul Jacobs that wrote this article. We should get Paul on the show.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be a great discussion.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is a topic that's going to keep increasingly coming up as you look to the future.
Now, here's what we could do. We could run a bold experiment.
How bold, Todd?
Well, bold in such that we would need some money to do it, some help.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
So you or I could find some personality.
Mm-hmm.
How big is the community that you live in? Is it big?
I think maybe 40,000 probably.
So you and I are in about the same ecosphere.
Mm-hmm.
If we could find somebody that would do, we're going to have to give this 6 months at least.
Yeah, but I'm surrounded by cities that are probably in the 500,000 range. Probably.
But you're not going to want to cover those. You want to do within a county.
Truly local.
Truly local.
Well, that county does include probably a city that has about 500,000 people.
Oh, well, then it might be, might be on the potential. But I think we want to try to do this somewhere where it's a little smaller. But it would, Rob, we're talking about a whole business here. We're looking, this is like a $30,000-$40,000 experiment at a minimum.
Maybe more.
Well, if you have someone that's a paid producer that does a show daily and can do his own work, can do his own prep, and then someone to do ad sales, and we advertise on radio for that show,
Hey,
So-
Todd, I can think of a couple of great partners to bring in to help us with this.
Oh, are you talking about CityCast?
CityCast or Seth from Jacobs Media. You know, he's built a local show in Detroit,
Yeah.
as I recall. Right.
So, there is, something that I think someone just got to figure out the formula.
Mm-hmm.
But
Because we may see just an explosion of new content creators that want to get involved in this. So who knows?
it's not for the faint at heart.
Well, podcasting in general. Is
Well,
not for the faint of
in all
heart anymore.
honesty, you would probably need like 3 podcasters.
Right.
So that one's doing Monday, Wednesday, another's doing Tuesday, Thursday, and one's doing Friday. So you split the load. So you don't drive someone into the dirt,
Right. Yeah, that's true.
So I don't know. And how long has it got to be? Does this have to be, again, my commute in my town, all right, Rob, if you had to drive to some place 5-6 miles away or 10 miles away, let's say 10,
Mm-hmm.
how long of a drive is that where you're at?
Probably 10, 15 minutes. Probably.
Right. Same for me. I can drive. My commute is 35-mile-an-hour speed limit for 2 miles, 55 for a mile. Well, actually 55 the rest of the way, but no one drives 55. I drive 12 miles in 10 minutes. So,
Yeah.
it's for those of you that are stuck in traffic, sorry, I'm done doing that.
You paid your dues on that one.
Yes, I did for many, many years sitting in my car. Matter of fact, Raw Voice was built in meetings from a Mazda CX-9.
So off of the CityCast website in their kind of careers area, it says, not seeing jobs in your area? Reach out anyway. We're growing and we might be in your city soon. Let us know if you're interested and we'll be in touch if we launch there.
I don't have time to run another thing,
Yeah, right.
to be honest with you. So hopefully we're spawning some ideas here with somebody.
Right. Well, yeah.
Well, let's see if we can get them on and talk about this. I think between the Jacobs Media folks and CityCast, maybe we can, spear some ideas that are
Right.
not going to require a city that's 1 million people.
Create a new popular genre in podcasting here.
I tried this already.
Yeah.
I actually tried this in 2005.
Oh, that's right. In Hawaii. Yeah.
And well, we tried to do podcaster news where we basically did city focus. And really, it was really way before its time. And part of the challenge is they weren't daily shows. They were mostly weekly. It was a weekly show about the fashion district in LA, or a weekly show about something in Philly. And it was just weekly somethings with no focus, with no arrangement, with no programming. And, we were dumb. We didn't really know what we were doing at all. Little did we know we were actually launching a whole bunch of brand new podcasts, which we did, regular podcasts that survived on their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
What's the rest of you think?
We've spawned hopefully a discussion here, and we can expand on it over time. And I don't know if you saw the Stephen Goldstein article that was also put out about visualizing your audience.
Is he been listening to the show?
Right.
I've been on a bunch of interviews recently where I've been talking about this.
Yeah, right.
So I'm not saying, it's kind of like,
Yeah, I saw Stephen at the Talkers conference. He was down there presenting a little bit about podcasting. So yeah, but this topic is interesting.
Yeah.
I've talked about this topic to podcasters all the time.
Me
They come
too.
to me and say, I'm not growing my show fast enough. I only have 100 people listening.
Yep.
And I tell them, back up and get some perspective on this.
Right.
How often do you get up and present to 100 people?
Right.
Right. So, success is relative,
Yeah.
right, to your perceptions of what success
Yeah.
is. So, go ahead.
The analogy I use is if you're going to go talk to Rotary,
Right.
and there's 80 people at Rotary, and you walk in and there's 80 people in front of you, you're going to be prepared to talk to 80 people in front of you, because if you aren't, you're going to be embarrassed.
Right.
And you're not going to put on
Doesn't
a
matter
good.
if it's 80 or 20 or 10
Right.
or 5. Right.
And when it's 100,
Yeah.
and if you think about if you think about 100 people in front of you, or 1,000, or 5, or 10,000, your perspective change, and he's right on the money.
Yeah, right.
He's right on the money, because you will take a whole different attitude with your audience.
When you really shouldn't. Right? It
Well,
should be
you should already.
does scale equate to taking what you're doing seriously, or should you be doing the same kind of
you
care
should be doing it already,
at 5 people versus
Right.
50,000 people?
because what you really have, because it's lonely behind the microphone.
It is. There's no one here with me.
Right.
Yeah.
It's lonely behind, and Rob and I get to look at each other.
Right. Thank goodness I get to see Todd.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that. But anyway, we have this visual thing going on, but
Yeah.
in the back of my head, I'm always thinking you are all out there.
Yeah.
And I for years I had a sticker. It's not on my desktop anymore. And it didn't, I don't think it said visualize the audience, but remember they're listening or something like that. It was basically a kicker to me to remember that there's this vast audience in front of us. And actually it's more intimate than that. It's like we're leaned up against them, talking to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's that holding a cocktail, and being around in Jib John.
Yeah, there's people watching this show on big screen televisions, and there's people watching it on their iPhones.
Right.
It goes the whole spectrum. I watch this show occasionally just to check it out on my big screen 50-inch television on YouTube. So you can get this, and that's been the case with this show for years. And so you have to think about it like, well, if a person is listening or watching this on a television, what type of experience do they want to get on that too? So, right.
So Robert, by the way, Patrick, thanks for saying hello earlier. Robert Crandall said, it's too bad the advertisers don't see a value in a small audience. I think it
depends on how it's packaged.
So it's different. I think it's local. If you're local, that advertiser's trying to reach a very local audience. You get car dealers having that big savings down there. Come down, we got a $9.99. Drive it off the lot. That guy. He's trying to reach, wherever that broadcast signal can go. So it's a very localized small audience, depending on the market you're in. But in podcasting, Robert, it's Rob and I and many others have beat our heads against the wall literally for a dozen years. That's why we're launching programmatic advertising for our podcasters, because their money's not ever going to roll down to small podcasts. Well,
and it's also, programmatic has reached a level of CPM that's competitive with host reads now. So why not, right?
Right.
That's the other. When I first started working on programmatic advertising, when I was working at Spreaker, the CPMs were like $2 and $3. It's like it was barely worth it, right? And now at least there's some significant revenue share going into programmatic right now. So there is some incentive now that wasn't in the past. So we may see baked in host reads kind of diminish out there, or they will become kind of like a rare eagle, that is only done for shows that are, that are expecting, $50-$60 CPMs or something. I don't know.
So Rob, I found a post, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. 50 people. That's kind of the size you would see in like a school board meeting.
Right.
Here's 100. Here's 150. Now, if you're going to go speak in front of those people, there's 150 people staring faces at you.
Right.
Let's go to 250.
It's just more of them. It's not any less pressure.
No, 250, and let's go to 5. Let's go to 500.
Right.
When I was went out to Las Vegas and talked to all the teachers in the Las Vegas school system, I had about 500 teachers sitting in front of me for me to talk about podcasting for 45 minutes. Do you think there was any pressure?
Well, I think we've had close to 500 people sitting in front of this show live on stage at Podcast Movement in the past.
And then we get to 1,000, and boy, things change pretty quick.
Yeah.
That's and there's a lot of shows that are reaching 1,000 people. And if you can, again, visualize this, let's take it to 3K. Look at that. Look at that sea of bodies. 3,000 people. It becomes
a little less personal at that point, though.
But
once you get to be that scale.
But the problem is that's the wrong attitude to have, because this is a one-to-one medium. You're having as much effect on. Let's go up to 50. Let's just go down a room of 1. You're having the same conversation, exact same conversation with 50 that you're having with 3,000.
I think the big difference, though, Todd, between those two situations, though, realistically, is that if you're presenting, and this has been the case with all my, speaking presentations, that the smaller crowds are a lot more intimate, right? You can take questions, you can meet with people in the audience after the show. When you get up to that level, you're not going to be meeting with people, and they're not going to be taking questions.
If you're but hold on now, if you're doing a podcast,
right, like a live show or something,
live, regular, doesn't matter. It's about the perspective of who you're talking to. I don't care about the questions. If I'm presenting to 1,000 people, that's a big number.
It is.
I don't think I've ever talked to 1,000 people. I've never spoken in front of 1,000. But then we get up into 10,000, or we get to 20,000 people. And imagine these shows, we're 10 to 20 that are listening to this. So that's a big number of folks that are listening. And then we get into football stadiums, 50,000 people.
I think the closest that I've ever gotten to up in that scale is my college basketball playing days, but that was about it. That was a different dynamic.
100,000 people at Michigan Stadium. So
there are shows out there that have that many people listening.
That's right. The key is they're not watching; they're listening through their earbuds. So I think we've made enough analogy here. But Steve Goldstein's absolutely, unequivocally, I agree 100%
But he also says that it's hard to build an audience, but he says it's a whole lot easier to lose them.
Oh yeah.
Once you have them, so take what you're doing pretty seriously.
Thus, treat and respect them.
Right. It gets back to the core values of podcasting,
and that's
if you're going to want to hold them.
And that's why now, if I get to the point for my regular Geek News Central show, if I'm, again, different rules apply. Sorry, if you're new, suck it up, Buttercup. You got to produce content.
Mm-hmm.
You got to keep cranking. But I've got 17 years.
Yeah.
And if I'm not feeling it, and if I'm down, and a Red Bull's not going to fix it, I cancel. I don't do the show.
It doesn't happen that often. I think you need to minimize that.
I probably do it now more than I have in the past.
Got it.
But
Well, you're more established now.
but
Too, so that helps.
but also at the same point, I feel bad when I do take time off. But
do you apologize to your
oh,
audience, or-
absolutely. I tell them what happened and why, because they don't want to hear you. Duh. They can that energy, it just bleeds through.
Right.
Doesn't matter if you've had 2 Red Bulls and you're up. You're not going to be on your best A game.
And you might be wasting their time, is what you're saying.
Right. You're wasting. You don't. So you're not respecting them.
Right.
Is my key. If so I think it's I think Steve really is a good timing on that article. It's really odd because I have done a number of interviews recently. I've been on the internet interview circuit quite a bit with a lot of shows, and that topic's come up 3 or 4 times where I've talked about visualizing audience size. So I'm not saying Steve stole that. We all do it.
Right.
You do it, I do it. And this is advice I've given podcasters as well for a long, long time.
It just helps drive perspective
Mhm.
because it's easy to feel like, oh, I only have 50 people listening, and Joe
Yep.
Rogan has
Mhm.
2 million. I'm a
Right.
loser.
Right.
So, and that's not really
No.
fair to yourself. It's
No.
not really fair to what you're trying to accomplish, and you may be just getting started too. Joe's been doing a show for 10 years, so
What's more intimidating is when you go to speak at a big event and they've given you the big room at a bad time,
right,
and you
nobody
walk
shows
into
up.
it
Right,
and there is
right,
it can seat 500 and there's 40. You're like
right.
you don't want to. The word you want to say is I can't
You're
say it on the
right.
show. But then you got to go out and you got to rock it like there's 500 people sitting there.
Right. Yeah, it's easy to have that psychological game hit you where you're
Oh.
like deflated, right? Because
Right.
You're disappointed and you're like, oh, this doesn't matter.
Mhm.
And all that
It
stuff.
matters
And
those people that are sitting there.
right. That puts you into a headspace that isn't beneficial to the people that
Right.
are there to
That's
support
right.
you, that you should be trying to build that number. Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of those things where you're going to present and 5 people show up. Don't give them a 5 people presentation. Give them a 100 people presentation.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because they'll go and talk about it.
Well, you may even want to think about it from the perspective of, you're presenting to one person.
Right.
What value are you delivering to
Well-
one person? It's the same thing we do with our podcast, right?
Yeah.
What's the value that I'm delivering to a singular individual, right?
Mhm. And thus the reason why the podcast awards are the way they're designed the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
They're designed in a way that I want podcasters to engage their audiences. And this is oftentimes why small shows
Win.
win. Yep. Is because they're able to engage their audiences.
Yeah, right.
So it's
And that gets back to what I was saying earlier. Sometimes it's easier to engage a smaller audience than it is to engage with a larger audience, right? People feel like they're just one of, a huge number of listeners, where on a smaller show, they feel like there's like a little community that they can connect with.
Right.
Especially when you do something live. I think like what we do here and like what I used to do with the Spreaker Live show, there's live audience listening that goes on, and it's a place for people to congregate and talk amongst themselves as well, not just the pathway between. So sometimes I got the impression in some of the live shows that we've done together or whatever is that the audience engagement is more important than the engagement with us. It's like between audience members becomes more important. So it's an interesting dynamic that you see happen with live shows that have been able to achieve some level of scale, right? I've seen some shows that have like 5,000-6,000 people listening live.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can just imagine that, I know Leo Laporte's had live shows. He's been doing live shows for a long time too. And he's had big communities of people that were listening live and commenting, right? So you have this kind of this flow. It's almost like an ocean of people's thoughts flowing through while your show's going on.
Well, it's like No Agenda. They run a chat room, and there's this just blasting stream, and he calls it the troll room, and they keep an eye on it.
Yeah,
And
I guess that speaks to the times we live in, though, Todd, right? I mean, if you're a political show, you're going to have trolls.
that's right.
Right. Yeah.
So, by the way, I did finally got my act together. I released it this morning, the Podfest Roundtable. I called it the Roundtable because it really wasn't kind of live, but I call it the Podfest Roundtable, and we talked about networks. So definitely, episode 504 is out with Katie Crismosos. I always destroy her last name. I apologize. Of the Women in Mediation Network, and Marla Isaacson of OSA Collective. So that I think you're going to get a lot of bang out of that particular conversation. And actually, considering what we had to go through to recover that audio file, it sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
So
you can actually understand what was said, where some of the recordings we got out of there were unintelligible.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, like completely, like
yeah,
it was bad.
Right. It was bad. Yeah. So, and speaking of live event type of recordings for this show, we are going to be live on stage at Podcast Movement again.
What day?
I don't have an exact date yet, but it will be another lunch and learn type of a session. So it'll be in on main stage, and it's going to be streamed live and recorded. So we're going to have that capability. I just don't have a date yet, but the time will be probably around noon on one of the days. Anyway, right. And I'm talking to Dan about having him join us here on the show, probably either next week or the following week.
Well, give me advance notice so I can get our configuration ready.
Right.
One thing, Rob, is, so just if it's Friday, let me know that as soon as possible.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm trying to make reservations. I might be leaving out of Dallas because I've got a follow-on thing immediately following Podcast Movement. I go right to another event. So
I think it's going to be kind of probably midweek is
okay,
my guess.
That's fine. Yeah, if it is Friday, then I can schedule my flight out because I've been looking at airline flights and holy smokes!
I know. I booked my flight down there too, and it's expensive.
It's you can't fly to Vegas for $300, or you can't go to Vegas for $300 anymore. You can't go to Dallas for $500 anymore.
Yeah, I wanted to go to Seattle here at the end of this month, and it was like as expensive to fly to Europe as it is to go to Seattle.
So I'm going Dallas. So I'm leaving Detroit, Dallas, Vegas, Atlanta, Detroit, and that's creeping up on $2,000.
Yeah,
and I'm actually happy it's only creeping up on $2,000.
Right. Yeah.
So
it's getting crazy. I hope it settles down a little bit on that.
And people are flying like mad dogs, and all these flight delays and stuff.
Canceled flights. Lots of canceled.
Yeah. So it's not pretty for sure.
So it'll be interesting to see, what's going to happen at Podcast Movement. How many independent podcasters are going to make it given the travel situation? I guess it depends on when they booked their flights. If they booked it 6 months ago, they're probably okay. But,
boy, I tell you, if you'd had half a crystal ball, you would have booked 6 months ago.
Yeah.
It's we just decided not to go to a specific event. It's the first time we've ever decided not to go to an event because of cost. To go and exhibit at an event is because of airline costs, hotel cost. It was just, if we did the math, it ultimately would have ended up to been like $30 a head. If you take the expected attendees,
the attendees,
and you divide it by your travel and the booth and everything else, so it's like it's $30 is that's it's an insane variable. We used to be able to do it for $1.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was kind of my, $1.50, $2 a head for attendee wise was a good variable. But 30, and again, 30 is great if it's the right audience.
Yeah, Todd, I think the interesting part about that is it's making me wonder if, and I think we're starting to see it a little bit already, is that the growth of regional shows may be picking up because of this, where people, within driving distance or something like that versus flying distance.
Well, there's not a lot of regional stuff going on right now.
I know. Well, I mean, there was the Podstock one that we did.
Right.
And I think to some degree, Podfest is really kind of a regional
and
show.
Joe Pardo's not doing his show this year. He's pushed to next year. So it's...
Yeah, we may be getting pushed back into more virtual events again.
Not doing it.
No, I know, but I'm just saying in the industry more generally.
No.
But it's going to be tough to get sponsors for those.
No, I will not do it. I'm not doing any more virtual. It's no some value gain back.
Right.
And
it's great to be a speaker at them, but yeah, what's the ROI on them if you have to sponsor and yeah.
So I'm not going to show my crystal ball or what I have planned, but it's one of those situations where people are, well, okay, so this is the conversation. So, honey, I want to go to a podcast event. Oh, really? Where's it at? It's in the city. Oh, great. How much is it going to cost? Well, the ticket's this much, and the airplane's this much, and the hotel is this much, and food is this much, and by the way, we won't be able to take a summer vacation.
Right.
Because you have expended your budget.
You have to choose between the two, right?
You have to choose between the two. So this could keep numbers down. And if you're a new podcaster and you're looking at outlaying X number of dollars, these events are, don't get me wrong. I know some people are hearing me talk this. I shut up. The value of a podcast movement is incredible.
I think we look at, as companies, hosting platforms, look at it a little differently than a podcaster
right
does, and so that's what you have to keep in mind.
Yeah, for the sessions and the education, it's a fire hose event. But for us, it's a podcast acquisition event. Podcaster acquisition event.
Right.
So we have our own motive.
Yeah.
As a podcast host.
Yep.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, I haven't even been watching. Seems like you've been watching the news more than I have. And of course, there's been plenty of it. But just it is a little slower than what things have been lately. But a lot of companies are making lots of big claims right now, and I find it's a little entertaining at times that people come up with new websites and so forth. And they're saying they make a claim that it's the greatest to discover this, or it's the greatest to discover that, or it's the best place to get listener engagement, and lots of things are being thrown out as a sound bites.
Yeah, there's a lot of that too. I mean, even in Pod News today, there was an article that was put out by Westwood One's Pierre Boulevard, who said, I guess because of some PodSites research that was showing that there's a lot of ads happening in the podcasting space that are kind of frequent, right? So podcast listeners are hearing the same ads over and over and over again.
Wow. Surprise.
And that frequency is is being overemphasized, where he's making the suggestion that reach should be more emphasized than frequency. So
Reach being non-duplicative audience or bigger shows?
It's probably both. I would say is probably where he thinks that the value is, and I guess the research is showing that reaching new listeners with the message maybe gives more longer term potential return, right? Versus giving the same message a million times to the same people, right? They got the message, as this old saying goes, right?
And it's taken 17 and a half years to figure this out.
Well, it's showing up in the research.
Oh, I got to go find it. Let me go find it. I have
it's on
no.
westwood1.com.
I have a presentation, and let me go find this thing. If I can find it real quick and bring it up on the screen. Let's see. I got to get in the right email. Got to get into Google Drive. All right.
Because it says here, Q1 2022, the average podcast campaign ad frequency measured by Podsights was 6.32, a twofold increase from Q1 2021 of 2.97. So this means that there's much more repetition of ads, I guess is what this is saying.
Right.
In the same number of shows.
All right. So let me see if I can find the date on this. Oh, this is old. I mean, this is really, really old. So this is a presentation I used to give to media buyers. Wide versus narrow in your podcast campaign strategy. Go wide. Don't narrow your options or audience. Problem. Limited shows, 5,000 listeners per episode. Limited ad inventory in big shows. So if you are in 4 podcasts, they're reaching, basically what this has really done is talking about getting 14 ad spots across 4 podcasts in a month to reach 400,000 podcast listeners. So you get 14 spots, all right, across 4 podcasts. And then if you go wide.
On a monthly basis.
On a monthly basis. So on a monthly.
Those shows that are published weekly, you would think?
Right. This and again, this is just a hypothetical audience that was actually using real data. 4 podcasts that were reaching 410,000 a month. You're getting 14 ad spots. In week 1, you got 4. Week 2, you got 2. Week 3, you got 4, so on. Now we go and we look at 52 podcasts. And this one was reaching 1.31 million people. Total ad inventory was 267 spots. So they were getting 3 times the money, but still many more multiples of spots and non-duplicative audience. I showed this to media buyers for about a quarter. And I might as well taken this thing and thrown it in the damn trash.
They didn't want to hear it.
They want to hear it.
Yeah.
They didn't want to hear it.
It's too complicated, Todd, to
so
buy like that, right?
So, I was like, and I had history. I had history here. And the history I used was one of the advertisers we had. We went 24 consecutive quarters, having 400 plus shows on ad buys. A non-duplicative audience.
Right.
Meeting goal every month. But yet, these idiots will only buy the top shows. And they
think if they hit the audience enough times on the frequency side, that they'll force those small numbers of listeners that are probably mostly the same listeners over and over and over again. But somehow that'll translate into conversion.
But someone else is going to come up and say, Todd, you only need to advertise in the top 5% of shows to reach 90% of the listeners out there.
Right.
Whatever.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Well, it's not true.
No, but that's what the messaging has.
That's what the messaging is.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And when I roll the data,
right. And for some reason, the data here is showing that the conversion rates are going down. I wonder,
amazing,
as a proportion to the frequency.
amazing.
Yes, yes.
So
I can see how that might happen. Yeah.
But I showed that people would go, oh, yeah. I can spend, and they just couldn't get it.
Plus, also, you do this in the middle of a probably a growing recession, and
But
you're
but
probably
media
gonna
buyers,
have less conversion.
but media buyers were during the last recession. Advertising didn't slow down, conversions didn't slow down
Okay.
during the last recession.
Then it just must be a factor of frequency then,
I think so, and being on too few shows.
and it's not being very efficient with their ad spends.
Well, they're putting ad loads that are high ad loads.
Well, that certainly contributes.
And they're
to
being very narrow on the scope of the shows they buy.
Mm-hmm.
By 4,000 maybe total shows across the entire podcast space.
They may be training audiences to ignore the ads too, because there's too many of them.
And yet I run GoDaddy every single episode since June of 2005.
You do have a frequency situation going on there, Todd.
Yes, I do.
But you also have a churn in audience.
But
too,
I have a churn in audience. I have new people coming in the door.
because you're a news program.
That's right.
So you're going to have a heavy churn of audience with that type of a
About 2 years
piece
is
of
about
content.
the run.
Right.
2 years they time out. Maybe they spend 6 months or 9 months or a year gone. They come back.
And that's probably why GoDaddy's had good success with you, is because of those dynamics. And I think it's a complex topic to get into with a podcaster.
Well, they don't.
Right.
They don't like it.
Right.
Well, advertisers don't like it either. When I tell them,
shows are going to have a different dynamic on ROI.
When I tell them, I says you have to do a 3-month buy. You have to buy all 12 or all 24 episodes. They're like, we don't want to run that frequently. I'm like, you don't get it. And some shows are like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to test a podcast, you got to commit to it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just come in. Oh, I want to do a test run for a week.
No.
It's not going to give you enough data to know what the right choice is.
It's just like radio stations desperate to take Amazon money. Those that are running 1 week, one ad spot runs are desperate to take money, and they're doing, in my opinion, they're doing a disservice to the podcasting community. But what do I know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Robert says, would a traveling show, say Podcast Mobile, that goes from town to town, puts out seminars? Yeah, that might be a cool one. Get a motorhome with sponsors, logos all over it.
That's an interesting idea. Yeah.
Yep. It is an idea.
Says podcast reach surges. 1 out of 4 persons 18 to 49 are reached daily, up to 3 times from 2016. So it says a percentage of 18 to 49-year-old Americans reached daily by a podcast. It's been going up. Quarter 2 2020 was about 17%. Quarter 2 2022 is 25% reached daily by a podcast. So
I posted something yesterday on my Facebook page. This is a non-podcast topic, but we are podcasters that are listening to this podcast. And I'm not a doctor.
Right.
And but I do want to bring to your attention one thing they think we as a podcast community can maybe help with. Fentanyl is now the number 1 killer of Americans in the 18 to 45 year range.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it has reached that level. And so this saying you keep hearing about, 1 pill will kill you, it's absolutely unequivocally the truth. And we're getting a lot of recreational users that are dying from an overdose.
So is this laced other drugs or with fentanyl?
It's all of the above.
It's all the above.
All of the above.
Because I think a lot of it has been like laced marijuana or laced other stuff.
Well, and if you trust your plug, and again, I don't think I'd trust anybody at this point with anything.
Right.
But I'm just going to say that there is many pharmacies in the United States will allow you to pick up Narcan free. Not all. Some have basically walk up and say, I need Narcan. If you even think in the slightest, and there's some good videos on training online and how to use this, but if you have even a suspicion you may have a immediate family member that might be experimenting, this is something you should have at the ready.
So it's a antidote.
Right.
Overdose is what
and
you're saying.
usually the Narcan kits come with 2 inhalers, 2 vaporizers. But this situation is getting pretty bad. I've got a friend that talks about it a lot. And this is the only thing that's going to save one's life. And if you need to go get it, it's too late. That person's not going to make it. But what it will do if you have it is hold potentially, not guaranteed, hold them to get emergency help there, to get 911 in. Right. And while most of us would not think about having Narcan on or about ourselves, it may be the thing that saves the life of someone at risk. And also be careful if you are out and about and you see a pill or a substance. For God's sake, do not touch it with your bare hand, because skin transfer sometimes can be enough to make you the victim. So be careful out there. And again, I'm not a doctor. Do your own research. A lot of companies are giving Narcan training now. So ask your company if they're doing that. Number one killer of 18, and it's not COVID, it's not automobile accidents, it's overdoses, 18 to 45 in the United States.
Crazy.
It is crazy.
And what's ironic about that is that the other piece of data that I'm looking at right now says podcast daily reach is strongest among 18 to 44. The highest number is 18 to 24. So, that could save a podcast listener's life. So.
And if you're at a party and someone says, have a snort or a sniff or take this, you may not make it. And so, and again, I think those that are the biggest risk are recreational users.
Todd, and it's just a remarkable number that I'm looking at, and it's
incredible.
Well, just the percentages of young people listening to podcasts right now. I mean, it's the age group 13 to 17 is almost 14% of podcast listeners in the U.S. in Q2 2022, and 31% are 18 to 24. That hasn't been the case for very long.
No.
That's a big change.
But in regard to the previous subject, do your own research.
Yeah.
I'm not a doctor.
Right.
Don't claim to be. But be careful.
Yeah. I haven't had any fentanyl impact anybody that I know.
I have friends that have had family members affected.
Have you? Yeah.
Yeah, that have actually died.
Oh.
Because it's like, and even police officers that have made drug bust, they've opened the trunk and didn't have gloves on and touched something, and actually their partner's administering Narcan to them on the side of the highway because they had a transfer for skin transfer.
Wow, it's that dangerous, huh?
Yeah, it's that.
Jeez.
Well, it's that bust they just did recently said it could kill 25 million people with the amount of stuff that was on the hood of a car.
Jesus.
So it's a big deal. And if any of your doctors out there and you're cringing, well, again, do your own research. I'm not a doctor.
Right. Yeah.
All right, this is going to bring us to the end, Rob.
Yeah, I think we're wrapping it up. Let's do it.
I'm Todd at blueberry.com. At Blueberry is the Twitter account for Blu-ray Podcasting. I'm at Geek News myself personally. Definitely reach out to us at any time. Rob?
Yeah, I'm Rob Greenlee, and I have a Twitter account at robgreenlee.com. That's with 2 E's on the end. And you can certainly send me an email, robg@libsyn.com. Happy to hear from you. I think we also have an email address, rob@newmediashow.com too, that actually gets around. And thanks, Todd. It was great to have everybody with us today, and hopefully we'll have Dan Franks on next week to talk about podcast movement.
Sounds exciting. Everyone take care. We'll see you next time here on the New Media Show. Everyone see you later. Bye-bye.
Okay.